Hi. My name is Siri Agrell. Yes, Siri like the iPhone, except I know way more and I will not answer any of your questions. I want to start by telling you about one of my favorite things on Twitter right now, which is not hard because everything else on there is pretty much awful. It happens when an entrepreneur or a tech founder or a company unveils a new product and then someone else points out that they've basically invented a substandard version of something that has been around for a very long time. And I call this inventing the tent. Exhibit A is the pause pod. This is a structure that you can set up and climb inside after a hard day of coding or thinking or typing or Instagramming. And yes, as someone rightly pointed out, it is basically an indoor tent. This trend has also seen the invention of things called co-living and house hacking, which were put forward as potential solutions to our affordable housing crisis. And they are essentially new names for living with roommates or renting out your basement. There have also been an innovative new product introduced by a rideshare company recently where instead of being picked up at your house and taken somewhere specific, the vehicle drives along a set course, a set route, and you can get on or you can get off. And yes, when this service is available to everyone, it's called the bus. So what does this have to do with social impact? Well, I'm here to argue to you and somewhat to myself that government is the greatest tool of social impact that there is. Governments are social impact agencies. Cities and provinces and countries are social impact agencies. They provide rights and opportunities, or they don't. They exist to serve the needs not of customers or of shareholders, but of the people. Of all the people, regardless of whether they walk or drive or rent or own or have access to the internet and smartphones or not. That is their mandate, that is their purpose. And so at a time when there's lots of discussion about innovation in the government space, about smart cities and data and technological solutions, it's absolutely essential that we talk about and understand the purpose and the role and the impact that government has and needs to have. Because if we don't, we run the risk of accepting substandard alternatives that don't serve the same purpose and that will not protect the same ideals. It's not enough to say that government needs to understand technology and innovation. Innovators and technologists have to understand the role of government, what it is there to do, and all the people that it's there to serve. We need to understand what we already have in order to make it better. We have to see ourselves as standing on the shoulders of giants and then try and reach higher with that firm foundation beneath our feet. We need to believe in government so we can build on those systems and improve upon them and augment them, and also so we can protect them. There's a real risk to not talking about government as a vital agent of social impact. We can see this by what happened in the media and the institution of journalism, and with some of the emerging consequences of how people now receive the majority of their information. I worked as a journalist for more than a decade, and I watched as the media was slow to adapt to emerging technology and the way that people were consuming and relating to information. The failure to adapt undermined or contributed to undermining the media's role, and as they struggled to keep up, I think they also failed to adequately reinforce their true value proposition, which is as the purveyors of truth. And so other forms of information sharing were developed, celebrated at the time for their ease of use and their accessibility, but which also introduced a whole new range of issues for the public because they are not built on the foundation of verified information. And so now we're dealing with things like this. We are seeing in real time that agencies of social impact can be undermined and their value degraded, and this is a dangerous thing, especially right now. It can happen naturally as people fail to evolve and adapt and as new alternatives emerge, but it can also occur by design, by those who have something to sell or something to gain. A study by 2 Harvard academics found recently that belief in democratic government is in decline. There are 3 factors in this decline they found, one of which is anti-systemic parties and movements whose core message is that current systems are illegitimate or ineffective. There are those who benefit when people stop thinking that government is a force of good in their lives and start to act like it doesn't matter who's in charge or what is done. We're seeing that play out in countries, and so it's vital to reinforce the narrative that democratic governments, I'm talking about democratic governments, are not illegitimate or ineffectual, because that's dangerous and it's simply not true. And so let's talk about the social impact that government delivers. Housing, transportation, healthcare, employment training, social services, shelter support, clean water, public safety, these are the foundational protections on which we all rely. We have to embrace the fact that they are important and they are necessary and they are part of the conversation on social impact and social change. They are also constantly evolving. The impact that government has is profound in that it is a live issue, responsive to the emerging needs of the people and improved upon, especially when pushed and encouraged and inspired and enabled, and even sometimes when strongly opposed. Look at what government can achieve. LGBTQ leaders and advocates can speak out tirelessly for equal rights, but only governments can make same-sex marriage legal. NGOs can do tireless work on behalf of populations around the world, but only governments can make long-term commitments to international aid. Philanthropy can harness the generosity of individual citizens to address worthy causes, but only governments can provide stable, long-term funding to vital social support networks and our country's most vulnerable populations. Advocates and innovators can generate ingenious solutions to problems like accessibility, but only governments can actually commit to supporting and maintaining whole systems that are accessible, that serve everyone of every background and ability and orientation. And yes, people who have lost their loved ones in ways that I cannot begin to imagine, escaping war and persecution and untold horror, those people can tell their stories and ask for the compassion of the world, but only governments can open their doors to refugees in their time of need. Government is an agent of social change that must be believed in and pushed and encouraged and improved by other agents of social change. Because governments can also do the right thing when no one wants them to, when people don't believe in climate change, when they don't want a safe injection site or a homeless shelter in their neighborhood, when they don't want to pay taxes or engage with issues like hoarding or systemic racism or the other myriad issues with which government has an obligation to contend. No, government is not perfect, trust me, I know that. But that's partly because it doesn't have the luxury of impermanence. It is harder to experiment and evolution comes more slowly when you have the obligation to protect and maintain the diverse interests of an entire population, when you cannot be the source of unintended consequences. And so we need to believe in government. We need to work in government. We need to challenge and expect more of government. We need to understand its dimension and its purpose, its intent and its ideals. Every government and every system must be pushed, challenged, augmented, and innovated upon from the inside and from the outside. They must constantly improve and adapt, and they must tell their stories of impact. And yes, I know this takes too long, and I know it's frustrating and slow. Believe me, I know that. But we can believe that something can occasionally be better and still believe that its existence is vitally and fundamentally important. I know that because it's how we all feel about the Walrus. Government is not a tent, it's not a bus, it's not a basement you rent out. It's not something that can be replaced or replicated. It's not something that we should sneer at or dismiss or forget to think about. It is not an area where we can accept pale imitations. It's a complex system of social impact, and when we pretend that fixing it is easy, or we try to innovate without understanding what we already have, or when we tell ourselves it doesn't matter if it lasts or who is in charge, or when we let people design it for one type of person, or if we give up on it altogether, then all you're going to get is a shittier tent.